Hi friends, again we take up the ode on a Grecian Urn. Very interesting. Today what we are going to do is, we are going to look at this beautiful Grecian urn in the eyes of, or through the lens of Paul de Man. And his essay, resistance to theory. Paul de Man and resistance to theory. How language resists its own meaning. Resists its own meaning. Now all these things began with Ferdinand de Saussure, who about, I think it was 1919 also, he made a pronouncement. Language generates empty symbols, meaningless symbols. He gives an example. You might have come across that CAT, cat. Do you find a cat there, or a tail of a cat, eye of a cat? Nothing of that sort. It's only a symbol, a verbal symbol. CAT, cat. Dog. There is no dog. There is no barking. Nothing of that sort. So words are empty symbols, and what you do is you fill it with meaning. Depends on many variables, such as culture and other things like that. Therefore, what de Man posits, language is rhetorical and it is not transparent. So in the essay, that's what he says. I am just summarizing the main points, because if I don't summarize it, you will think that I have gone mad or something like that. Literature resists fixed meaning. Second point. And third is that, interpretation collapses when we try to stabilize metaphor, symbol and theme. Interpretation collapses. As you can see, we are going to argue that. Based on this, critical understanding is undone by language itself. Language itself undoes its own existence. That is what de Man says. Therefore, de Man's conclusion is, ode on a Grecian is not a celebration of art's immortality, but how language becomes unsteady. That's what he says. So this is really a superb example of how language becomes unsteady. She said, in literature there is no logic of grammar. The logic of grammar and the play of rhetoric collide in ode on a Grecian Urn. It is not at all a celebration of art's immortality, but it tells us how language becomes unsteady. Language is unsteady, he says. So, once more, in literature, the logic of grammar and the play of rhetoric, they collide. There's a collision. In ode on a Grecian Urn, you can see apostrophe. All the props, TROPES, props or figures, apostrophe. Then you have got oxymoron, you have prosopopia, aporia, tautology. So these are the figures. Rhetorical use of language. Therefore, what happens? It has become a battlefield. According to de Man, it is a battlefield. Battlefield of what? Battlefield of, says, it is that the logic of grammar is a battlefield where logic of grammar and play of rhetoric collides. Examples is, so again he says, the poem proves a beauty is rhetorical. Truth is undecidable. The aphorism, see, I have already stated here, aphorism collapses into ambiguity. The last aphorism, beauty is truth and truth beauty, collapses into ambiguity. Truth is undecidable. interpretation keeps shifting. Impossibility of extracting truth from poetic language. And therefore the aphorism, the final aphorism, collapses into ambiguity. When I say these things, if you have some footing in deconstruction and Deman's way of thinking, it becomes easy, but still I will be able to, I will try to explain these things. One, he addresses, there's an apostrophe. The poem begins with an apostrophe. Apostrophe means address, So, thou unravished bride of quietness. Bride. Bride means a living being. But as you read through the poem, you find it is a lifeless marble. Marble piece. So where is the meaning? So the very first prop used in the poem is, in other words, it trips its own meaning, that's what he said. Understand that? Loses meaning. Again, the silver historian. A historian tells some story, narrates some past incidents. But here it is silence. The urn is silent, so it contradicts itself. You have got another oxymoron, cold pastoral. Pastoral means life, romantic, everything is romantic about greenery, shepherds, that's what we think about, streams and so on. So, but it has hillocks, valleys, beautiful topography. So these are the things that come to your mind. But when it is it is a cold pastoral that contradicts itself. That means it is frozen, no life. How can pastoral be cold? It has to be warm. Isn't it? Full of life. Again, you find the interpretation or the meaning collapses. You have the oxymoron or the opposites, cold pastoral. Then we have the prosopopia, another trop. That is the bold lover, mysterious priest, ever warm. Soon we find that they are all engraved in the marble and all frozen. Look at that. You are trying to give face to it. Prosopopia is giving face to non-living things. Trying to give face life to it. But the moment you give life, burning, a bold lover, about to kiss, the piping, the musician piping his song, about to, not doing it, but about to. Then what happens is, the moment of attempted triumph. But then soon we say that they are forever warm also. But soon we find that they are engraved on the side of a marble pot, and that also lifeless. So saying one thing then just the opposite of that when we interpret that we get. So Keats highlights the death of these figures rather than the life of these figures. Then towards the end you will find there is an aporia. Aporia means undecidability. It never ends. The meaning never comes as a final. There is no final meaning. That is aporia. Beauty is truth, truth beauty. Beauty is truth, truth beauty. Then what is the final outcome of that? So it's undecidable. What is beauty? What is truth? I am telling you, I am speaking, or I am trying to explain these things on the basis of demand and not mine. See? And then there is tautology. Tautology means repeating the same. A is equal to A. Then who says these words? Does the urn say? Does the narrator say? Or is an ironic gesture? Or does the poet say? Who is speaking? The speaking agent is unstable. So forever urn you say, in one place, at another place in the same linguistic field you can say. The whole poem is a linguistic field, the frozen marble. Just the opposite of that. So what it's trying to give? He tries to give voice to the silent objects. By doing that, he highlights the emptiness and artificiality of poetic expression. You understand? He tries to give life, but finally what comes out is the emptiness and the artificiality of poetic language. So poetic language becomes poetry, like writing a poem becomes impossible according to Demand, because there is no stable meaning. That's the thing. There is a metaphorical void. That's what Demand says, and also there is no concrete meaning. There is no logic. That's the point. I told you, this is not a celebration of artistic immortality, but how language becomes unsteady. And the logic of grammar and the play of rhetoric, they collide in this linguistic field called odd on a Grecian urn. So the silent stasis of the urn and the experiential life outside, it's impossible to bridge in the poem. By reading the poem, you understand, you come to a very sad situation, that it is impossible to bridge the silent stasis of the urn and experiential life or the sensual world. Sensual world. Therefore, what happens is, finally what happens? Finally, it teases out of thought. Teases out of thought, it is not any higher, any philosophical thing like that. Understand? The urn teases us out of thought. A traditional interpretation will think or say to us that it is something of higher thing, something you cannot achieve. Unheard melodies, you are going after unheard melodies and so on. Teases out of thought. But actually, it is not anything indicating anything about a higher experience in art or imagination. But what happens is, the language teases out of thought means it indicates the failure of language, according to Demand. So if you look at the poem, so I should say, a celebration of immortality of art, and it is contrasted to the transience of life, permanence of art, etc. We say that is a traditional interpretation. But Demandian interpretation is, it is a complete failure of language. Failure of language. The linguistic field is empty. Plenty of metaphorical words you can find here. That is what Demand says. Have you understood? Simple language to put, you can say, the logic of grammar collides with the play of metaphors. Because metaphors, there is no final meaning. You can't arrive at the final meaning. For example, time is thief. You can't arrive at the final meaning, eye of a needle. You have got a multiplicity of interpretations for that. Therefore, what happens? Language, meaning becomes, you don't search for meaning. in this poem, we according to demand, we are not going to search, or our search for poem is going to be a failure because of the play of rhetorics or metaphorical language here. Apostrophe, oxymoron, prosopopia, aporia, and tautology, and so on. That much I think is clear. That there is no decidability. Everything is undecidable. There is no finality. Open to multiple interpretations. So language fails. So here is a place where language fails. Language fails its own interpretation. That is the thing. Language teases us out of thoughts. That's a failure of language. That's what we find here. So point by point I can see the figures that I told you about is apostrophe means addressing, prosopopia means giving life to face, with non-living things like a sylvan historian, then called pastoral and so on. Then oxymoron is called pastoral. Aporia is, that is undecidability, and tautology means repeating the same thing again. Beauty is truth, truth, beauty, same. A is equal to A. Not a stable cognitive field. The word is not a stable cognitive field. The poem serves as a linguistic battlefield where the logical structure of grammar collides with the unstable nature of rhetorical figures. These are the two key points. Logical structure of grammar and the unstable nature of props or figures. So you can see aphorism collapses into ambiguity. The last aphorism, no, to be truth is beauty is truth, truth is beauty. Because of this, so unsteady moves us away from a search for meaning. You can't find meaning, but there is no meaning, is not final. This is in a fluid state, you can say, slippery. The ground is slippery here. Linguistic voids created due to a resistance to the rhetorical and figurative use of language. Rhetorical and figurative use of language is, I have already listed this. It's because of that, what happens is that contradictions come up. And not a celebration of art's immortality, but an attempt to expose the unsteady nature of language. This is Demanian reading, please, not my reading or traditional reading. This is not traditional reading of the poem. You can see my lecture 1 and 2. This is the third one and the last one on this. Logic of grammar and play of rhetoric collide in the poem. The poem is not about pots, but the impossibility of poetry. Meaning is never final, it keeps shifting. So actually, traditional uses the immortality of art and things like that. Life is transient, life is changing, but art is permanent. Friend to man, a friend to man. Even that is to be disputed. How can it be a friend to man? Because that is a non-living thing. Frozen, everything is frozen. There is no life there. Ever warm, it is said, but there is no life at all. So these are the points we just discussed. I think that I have somehow managed to put these thoughts into your mind and hope that you understood. Okay. So this is my last lecture on Grecian Urn, much celebrated poem of John Keats. Yeah. So with this, I come to the end of my discussion on Grecian Urn. First one, you remember, I was talking to you about Aristotelian reading of this poem. Second, a theoretic reading based on objective correlative, and now third is a deconstructive reading based on Paul Demand's essay, Resistance to Theory.